Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. Tonight, blessing the stage is saxophonist, composer, and band leader Donny McCaslin. And as you might know, the last couple of months, he's been riding high off his successful CD, Casting for Gravity, in which he again partners with composer, producer, Mr. David Binney, who I've profiled here on the Pace Report. I sat down with Donny earlier, and we talked about him going and investigating playing fusion jazz as well as electronic music, and talk about the partnership between he and Mr. Binney. Also sat down and talked about how he and his fans have related to this new music. Also, we sat down and talked about his origins growing up in Santa Cruz, California, him being exposed to jazz by his father, who is a jazz musician himself, as well as talk about the future of this music. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the sounds of Mr. Donny McCaslin live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. Congratulations on your latest album. This is a continuation from your last project, Perpetual Motion, and you are continuing the electric / fusion mode of your musical and your composition style.
Well, thanks so much. I am, and that's true. I did Perpetual Motion and had so much fun making it, and also, subsequently touring that music. And I felt like the musical interplay with Tim and Mark was just growing and growing. And we add Jason Lindner to the mix, and I just felt like I had to do another record, in this sort of electric sphere. And I do feel like this new one has a lot more electronica influences in terms of what I was listening to, when I was writing the music and conceiving it, and some elements of dub and dubstep and whatnot, which actually for me reminds me of music that I grew up listening to, because I grew up in Santa Cruz, which was like a major stop for the reggae groups. And so when I was a kid, I got to hear Peter Tosh and Jimmy Cliff and Mighty Diamonds and Burning Sphere and so on and so forth. So all that relates to the DNA that I kind of grew up with musically.
Also, we need to point out that David Binney was very instrumental in producing this record and also kind of skewing you into what you were trying to say musically for this project.
Well, absolutely. I mean, initially had suggested doing an electric record a few years ago, and as you know, he's produced most of my records, and I think this record, more than any of the others, was really in his wheelhouse conceptually, and he really did a lot of adding sounds, and he added some vocal things, but also just from the beginning, when I'm working on tunes, I often will call him and email him the tune, like, what do you think, how the form, blah blah blah, and there's a lot of back and forth, even through the compositional process for me. So he has just had a tremendous impact on all my music, but this record in particular.
This recording really kind of takes me back to the era of the fusion jazz, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, also a little funky Stevie Wonder, Talking Book, those three, the trilogy records in the early 70s. What was it about that period that you wanted to kind of recreate and create musically for your music fans now? And what are you trying to say about that music in the past?
Well, it's tremendous music, as you know, and I guess a little bit of a backstory to that would be that Paul Jackson, the great bass player who was playing with the Headhunters, was living in Santa Cruz when I was a teenager. And when I was 16, I had the good fortune of being in his group for a while and playing with him, a weekly gig. And, I was 16, like, I didn't know who Herbie Hancock was. I mean, I knew the name, but I didn't really realize all that. But just being around Paul, playing with him, absorbing his creativity was tremendous. And this record you mentioned, the Stevie records, Talking Book is a record I had as a teenager, and all that. There's a certain with the Headhunters, a certain way that Paul plays where it's just so funky, but it's loose. And it's gritty and it's greasy, and that's, I think, what I love funk that has that element of grease, if you will, and the creativity. I think Tim is our bassist is really inspired by Paul Jackson, and Tim is another one of those guys who's like, whatever he plays feels really good, and he'll take a lot of chances and he'll do a lot of different things, but that feeling of funk is permeating, and for me a strong rhythmic thing strikes me in my core. It's like swing, When I hear something that's really swinging, it just moves me on an unconscious level that I really love. And it's the same with funk music. When I listen to James Brown, who's listened to a lot over the years, and the records we've been talking about, I just love how it feels, and I want to bring that to my audience or whatever. I want to put that music out in the world, and I think the thing now it's combining that stuff and the love of that era of music with things that are happening now, like the electronica thing with Aphex Twin and Boards of Canada and Venetian Snares and other groups I like a lot. Flying Lotus. And then in a different way, groups like Michel Ndegeocello, Bon Iver, which is not funk, but it's the sonic thing happening there. Like, I'm trying to bring all those influences into play, too, because I like all that music a lot. And I think there's a lot of room there. The musical language that the guys in the band, like Mark Guiliana, our drummer, is so well versed in that music that they bring a lot of that language to what we're playing, and it's really fun.
I wanted to know, how is it, because you come from the straight ahead. I mean, bop, post bop, and now you've gone into the electronic funk phase, fusion phase. How has that been for your fans? Because this is the second project, and are they really receptive to this? Because I know how Miles's fans went when he went Bitches Brew. Right. They kind of was like, oh, no. But how has it been for you and your fans?
I mean, I think it's been pretty positive so far. I mean, for me, in a way, growing up where I did, playing with my father's group, who played straight ahead Great American Songbook tunes, Cal Tjader-esque Latin jazz, tunes like Mercy Mercy, Mustang Sally, kind of that R&B stuff. To me, those genres coexisted pretty organically growing up. So for me, it was a natural progression to do this. It was just what I was hearing, and I think people have been responding really positively to it. We've had a lot of great response at gigs. And I think one thing I notice is that the younger generation of fans, I think really this music resonates with them because the electronica language, the dubstep language, that stuff is what they have grown up listening to, as well as probably jazz and other things. But I feel like it really speaks to that generation, the 20-something, 30-something folks, which is just a byproduct of what we're doing. But I think it does speak to that generation in an interesting way.
Donny, you grew up in Santa Cruz, California, as you said earlier, and you got exposed to the music bug early through your father. And how did you decide to find your voice on the saxophone?
Well, sort of an impulsive decision, actually. I was in a junior high class, and I wasn't doing too well. And the last day of that term had come where you could switch classes. And my best friend at the time happened to be in beginning orchestra. So I just said, okay, I want to be in beginning orchestra, get out of my photography class. And I got there, and my father asked me what instrument I wanted to play, and I impulsively said tenor saxophone. I think the reason behind that is the guy who played in my father's band at that time he played tenor, was a real character. His name was Wesley Braxton. He used to wear these tie-dye shirts, he had a big beard, and he played these kind of wild solos on these vamps that would sometimes whip the audience into a bit of a frenzy. You know, they played on the Pacific Garden Mall outdoors, and people would be walking up and down the mall, and they would stop and hang out and listen to my father's band play. And so I was taking that all in. And in fact, one time I looked down in his horn, and there was, a pile of, like all this condensation in the bottom of the horn and a cigarette butt floating in the middle of it. So I guess somehow I thought he was cool. He was cool. And I think that his charisma kind of got me, and I think that's why I chose the saxophone. And, kind of right from the beginning, I was really into it and really serious and really, wanted to practice a lot and get lessons and kind of keep rolling with it. So from right away, it was just, what I felt like was my calling in life. Although I probably couldn't put it in those terms when I was 12 or 13, but right away it was like, this is what I want to do, and this is my mode of expression. This is the way I'm going to express myself in life.
As a teen, you had some serious instructors and mentors. In fact, I understand when you were senior year in high school, you played at the Monterey Jazz Festival with the orchestra.
Yeah, they had a great youth program at the Monterey Jazz Festival, and they had kind of like an all-star band of high school students that they put together every year. And I guess I was in it 2 or 3 years, and it was a tremendous experience. It was like we'd be there for a week before the festival rehearsing with Bill Berry, who had been in Duke Ellington's band. So we were playing a lot of Duke Ellington's charts that Bill had, I don't know if he transcribed them or gotten them. I don't know how he got them. This was before all this stuff was readily available. This is like, the early 1980s. So that was an amazing experience, Bill would be playing us videos of Ellington's band, And then throughout the week, guys like James Moody would come in and he'd play with us, and he was like the gentlest soul and so supportive. He'd come in, James Moody, right, and really humble and be like, man, I love what you're doing, really supportive. I was like, man, this is incredible, And Clark Terry, Bob Brookmeyer, there's a lot of the, heroes of the music. I was lucky enough to get the chance to play with, and also peers of mine who were in the big band who've gone on to great things. Larry Grenadier, we were the same age, and we were in the band together for many years, as was Luis Bonilla, great trombone player. Mark Turner was in it, so just a lot of great players. So it was a tremendous experience. I learned a lot going to that festival. And now when I go back and play, I was just there with Antonio Sanchez's band this last year. Man, it's so great. I just love it. It's such a great festival, and I have so many great memories there.
Berkeley was also another stepping stone for you, because in one of your mentors, instructors, you ended up playing for, and I've actually profiled him, the legendary Gary Burton.
Yes. Yeah, I guess maybe my senior year he put together a group to do a jazz cruise and put together a student group, and I was a part of that. And one thing led to another, and somewhere in the middle of my senior year, I joined his group and was in the group for about 3.5 years. And it was a great learning experience, touring the world and just learning from him about so many musical things, but also about the business. And he's a really intelligent person, so we'd have these long talks about politics and food and like all these things. It was a really great experience, and I feel like it helped me a lot.
a lot of musicians have different influences, musicians, instructors. Who are some of your influences and some of the people that you listen to that kind of help take shape in your style and your sound?
Well, for sure. I think one of my biggest early influences was Duke Ellington, you know, through my, not only my experience with Bill Berry, but at my high school band director, Don Keller, had been in the Navy band with Bill Berry, and they were good friends. Don was a trumpet player. So Bill had laid all the Ellington charts on him. So I went to this high school that was playing primarily Duke Ellington's music. Again, you know, this was 1980 to 1984. And so we listened to the Ellington a lot, and, you know, particularly the record, the Live at Newport record with Paul Gonsalves' epic solo on Dominio and Crescendo. And Blue, like, I listened to that a million times, and that was a really, you know, formative experience for me. And so I think that group was a heavy thing. And then Train, you know, like getting into John Coltrane. My teacher, Paul Contos, was who actually now heads the Monterey High School All-Star Band. Paul Contos was my teacher, and we were talking about giant steps and working on. So the Train thing was really huge for me for a long time, and then that kind of went into Michael Brecker, and I was at Berkeley, and that was kind of my main thing. And then I think I just really changed at a certain point, and I really was deeply impacted by Sonny Rollins on a lot of different levels. But I think the main thing I'll say is, like, the blue collar way that he plays, where the feel is so deep and the motivic development is so profound. Even like just like the simplest idea, he can weave it into this incredibly compelling narrative. So I think that really changed my life. Really getting deeply into Sonny Rollins. Joe Henderson, who was living in the Bay Area when I was growing up, I also listened to a lot. Wayne Shorter, of course, compositionally and as an improviser, all that really formative for me. But I think Sonny Rollins, it just changed my life completely. And there's a lot of other people I could mention, you know, of course, you know, the real heroes of my instrument, you know, Lester Young, Chu Berry, Coleman Hawkins, Ben Webster. There's so many people, but those are probably the main guys that I've mentioned. And then also I have to say, I for a while was playing with, I was playing a lot of sort of quote-unquote Latin music. I was playing a lot with Danilo Perez, who was a classmate of mine, and he's such a great musician. You know, he's like a drummer, a master drummer, and a master pianist, and it just, so...
Don't forget composers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, exactly. So all that's, my experience playing in his group really opened my eyes to the importance of really developing my rhythmic vocabulary and studying rhythm. And so I spent a lot of time, you know, listening, playing, studying Afro-Cuban music, Afro-Peruvian music, African music, Brazilian music, Argentinian music, so on and so forth. Like Danilo called it the music of the Americas. So I spent a lot of time working on that stuff and embracing it and just loving it. And I think that really changed my life too in a deep way. And I feel like that influence is still really strong for me. Like everything I really want to feel good. So if it's funk, electronica music, or if it's straight ahead or whatever I'm doing, that element is just paramount to me. And you know, it's a constant endeavor. I'm still learning, and I got a long ways to go. But I think those are kind of my primary influences.
What does jazz music mean to you?
Ah, man, it means everything to me. It means everything to me. It's, you know, it sort of makes me emotional just to think about that question, because it just means, it's just, for me, I guess, a place to tell my story and to express myself and my feelings. From an early age, that was really important to me. I had a tough childhood, and to have something like that I could go to release my emotions or whatever was couldn't have been any more important to me, you know. And I continue to feel that way. That just the experience. It's such a blessing to be on the stage and to be able to just play, you know, from my heart and soul. To try to just, you know, put it out there. It just means everything to me. I love it so deeply. Yeah.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank Mr. Donny McCaslin for his time, as well as the staff and management here at the Jazz Standard. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.